Let's talk essay number two. This one has a tendency to intimidate students a bit. And so I want to try to dispel some of that anxiety as best I can and give you a clear sense of sort of what the goal is here. What we're doing is rhetorical analysis, which is basically like critique. You're looking at the strengths and weaknesses of somebody's argument. And in an English 1A class, this might not be that hard. You're given a speech by a politician or an essay or an article by an opinion columnist for the New York Times or the Washington Post or something like that. And you basically pick apart their argument, tell me what worked, what didn't, and then overall whether they were successful. You're doing the exact same thing here. You're just doing it with a short story or a short novel. Okay. So your goal, and I'm making this general enough so that if I assign different authors, I don't have to change the video. So keep that in mind. If you are reading a short story and that author is trying to make a social critique or argument about society, and all the ones I choose do exactly that, they're making it some kind of judgment, right? They're looking at society and saying something's wrong here and we need to change it, right? So I've specifically chosen works to sort of highlight that angle, okay? Similar to what I did with essay one on social expectations and assumptions for poetry. So you're going to take the author's short story and say, what are they trying to argue about society, right? How are they doing it? They're going to be using character, dialogue, description, plot, setting, all the standard elements of narrative, which you guys are familiar with. You guys watch a lot of TV and movies, so you know about characters and dialogue and plot and setting and all that kind of stuff. So the author is using those things to push a particular idea. Your job is to figure out what you think that idea is. You don't have to be right. It's not about what the author intended. It's about what you're getting out of it. So if you think the author's making this argument, argument X, whatever that is, you then basically have to say, here's how he's doing it, and here's where it works, here's where it doesn't, and overall, is he successful or not? One option is to organize your paragraphs around Aristotle's three appeals: ethos, which is the author persona, right? How does the author, him or herself, or themselves come across to you? Are they coming across as authoritarian and strong and intelligent, or are they a little bit too ridiculous, a little bit too vague, or are they talking about both sides of their mouth, whatever, right? So author persona, that's ethos. Pathos, appeal to emotion. Now, originally this was like pity and fear and some of the basics and sorrow and that kind of thing, but it could also be vanity. It could appeal to the reader. Is the author appealing to the reader's self-interest, or are they making the reader afraid? Are they making the reader anxious, enraged, right? Lots of different ways that they could appeal to the audience's emotions as a way to get them to side with the author. So if the author makes you mad about what's happening to this particular character, and you feel like that's a sign of injustice, that's a sign of a society that's oppressive and hostile towards people who are different, you can go after that idea because that's what the author is trying to get you to feel. Does it work, right? Did the author get you to feel that way? Okay. And then there's logos, which is the author's appeal to reason, logic, through facts and things like that. Now, these are works of fiction, so by definition, they are not actual facts, right? However, do they do enough in the story to make you feel like, yeah, that may not be actually real, but our society could become that, or that's close enough to our society so that I can see what he's trying to highlight about our society, in which case his fake fictional or her fake fictional or their fake fictional examples and characters and events are pretty good stand-ins or surrogates or analogies to our society. If they are, and they work well, because they get you thinking about, oh, that's a lot like what we do in this circumstance, or we're kind of like that here, or whatever, then he's doing a good job. She's doing a good job. They're doing a good job. I'm hoping that makes sense, right? The idea is they are giving you evidence through story, through event, plot, character, setting, things like that, in such a way that they want you to be thinking about your society. Literature gets us to think about ourselves, think about our world, about our values. And are they doing an effective job at getting you to think that way? Cool. Now, does that getting you to think that way effort make you feel like you are going to side with that author? Not do you actually do it, but do you think it would work for, average readers? Would they be swayed by this author's use of character, plot, setting, dialogue, all those kinds of things, as a way to convey ideas and get readers to sort of buy into them? Okay, so you can break your paragraphs up along ethos, pathos, and logos. Now, that's only 3 paragraphs, and you never have just 3, because plus an intro and a conclusion is the 5-paragraph essay, and I hate that thing. We never write 5-paragraph essays in my classes, ever. Not in 1A, not in 1B, ever. So what can we do? Those 3 paragraphs can become 6, where you have logos where it works, logos where it doesn't, pathos where it works, because it should, at least at some points, and pathos where it doesn't, ethos where it works, ethos where it doesn't. So now we've got 6 paragraphs, get it the camera, 6 paragraphs, and an intro and a conclusion. We easily can get to the minimum page length, pardon me, easily get to the minimum page length of the essay. Easy peasy, all right? Most likely. However, if you don't want to focus on ethos, pathos, logos, you can shift it to talking about how, you've targeted clearly what the argumentative point the author is trying to make. He's trying to argue that we love technology too much, or we rely too much on religion and science to define our lives, or whatever it might be. Great. That gets discussed in your intro. And now you can say, here's how he does it through character. This list is going to be familiar. Plot, right? The events, dialogue, setting, etc. Now I can have 4 or 5 body paragraphs breaking down the different elements of fiction that the author uses to convey his, her, or their ideas. Okay. In each one of those body paragraphs, you will now give me strengths and weaknesses. Here's where characterization worked. Here's where it didn't. Okay. And it doesn't have to be perfectly balanced. You might be like, if there's 10 sentences in that paragraph, you might have like 7 saying characterization did not work except for these. And then it's like 3 sentences where you talk about, okay, 1 character was good, but the rest of them were not. Okay. So it doesn't have to be perfectly balanced. By the way, PowerPoints on all this stuff to make it clearer for you. This is a super fast overview. Your next paragraph on the plot itself, right? The sequence of events. Is there something in there that worked really well? Like these events really stuck out as sort of a comparative analogy to our society and how we act in this way. Great, right? It was really effective. Or these events were so ridiculous, so absurd, they were sort of a distraction because I couldn't think about how that applied to our society at all. Then it doesn't work, right? That plot thing actually pulled you out of reality and made you realize this is kind of ridiculous. That's not an effective plot choice for that author. So maybe that's a weakness, okay? Dialogue or setting, any of that stuff, again, what worked to make that author's idea stronger and more effective, and which elements of that did not work because they made the author's point less effective, less clear, less convincing, less persuasive. Okay. That's the essence of the body paragraphs. So again, Aristotle's 3 appeals, or again, elements of fiction, character, plot, dialogue, setting, atmosphere, tone. There's a lot. Okay. Look in the OER online writing about literature textbook that we have for elements of fiction that you think would be particularly useful to talk about for the work that you've chosen to write about. Okay. Now, last bit, and this is the tricky thing, and again, explained in more detail in PowerPoints with examples. For this particular essay, your thesis statement will not be given to me until the conclusion. First sentence of the conclusion, that's the first time I get your actual true thesis, what is known as the final judgment thesis. Instead, at the end of the introduction, you're going to give me a lead-off sentence or question, both of which indicate, here's the overall argument the author is making. We need to analyze it. Not, here's what my judgment is. Just sort of, hey, he's arguing that religion and science don't provide us the answers that we need, comma. But is he effective? Question mark. That sets up the rest of the essay. Or this author provides a strong argument against religion and science, comma, but we have to analyze it very carefully to determine if it's truly convincing. So now you're telling me that you're going to analyze it, and that's what's going to happen in the body paragraphs. So this lead off sentence, it's almost like a fake thesis because it replaces your thesis in some ways that would normally go at the end of the intro. I want you to be thinking about how thesis statements don't always have to go in the intro. They usually do. They usually go at the end. But sometimes you want to hold that thing back and make the reader go with you through that analytical journey. You're analyzing the rhetoric. That's why it's a rhetorical analysis essay. You're analyzing the author's rhetoric to see how effective his or her argument or their argument is. And then at the end of the essay, you say, okay, now that we've picked it apart, now that we've fully dissected this work and what it's trying to say about this idea, let's give our final judgment. Okay, so that's the essence. That's the super fast, I speak too quickly overview of essay 2. Lots of detail in the modules on Canvas for you to understand the different pieces of it. So make sure that you're looking at the PowerPoints, you're watching the videos that I post, you're participating in the online discussion. All that stuff is all terribly useful. The DLAs on facts, opinion, and reason judgment, all that stuff works together to help you understand what you're trying to do. Okay, understand those logical fallacies and things like that. Okay, so we're going to wrap right now on this. Go dig into the modules, get really, really nerdy about it. Ask me questions. If there's something that I'm saying isn't quite working for you, let me know. I will try to fix it in this module before the essay is due. If not, I will work to make that better for the future essays. I always want to improve. So if you ever see areas where I'm not doing my job well, call me on it. I am not a perfect instructor. I never claim to be. I do the best I can, and I rely on my students to let me know when it's working, but also when it's not. Right? This assignment was fun. Great. I'll keep assigning it. Or this one was really confusing. I didn't understand this part. Okay, I need to fix that. That's on me to do my job better. So always call me out on that. All right. Take care. And I'm hoping this was helpful. If not, as always, email me.